All right, now what it do? Coffee Conversations with Greg J is on. How you be? How you be? How you be? Holiday weekend or holiday week. Huh? The festive season is here. It's on and cracking. People are rushing to get home for Thanksgiving, whatever it is you celebrate at this time. They say the airport is jam packed. Busiest today and tomorrow, the busiest time of year to travel, as people are now, for the first time in a couple of years, getting ready to link up with family and friends for that big Thanksgiving feast. That's what we do in America. But today we're looking all across the globe here. They're going to talk about the music season, because along with the festive season comes the music award season. We just heard the Grammy nominations last week, and we heard and saw the American Music Awards. And by all accounts, people are saying it's not the same. And I was contemplating that this morning. When you say, what do you mean the American Music Awards are not the same? I get it. But I think times are different, right? My brother and I talk about this all the time, as we're never going to go back to how it used to be. It's just, you got to pivot, you got to adjust, you got to remix whatever it is you've been doing in these days and time, in this almost post-pandemic world. Things are different now. The way we go about things are different. Even on the music side, how people consume music is all different. Last week we were talking, I guess the last time we were together, we were still wondering who was the mayor, right? Well, Rex Richardson won, first Black mayor of Long Beach, California. Karen Bass won, first Black woman of Los Angeles, California. I saw an article yesterday, and you can go on Coffee Conversations with Greg J, the Facebook page, and go on Beach City Radio, the Facebook page, as well as the website beachcityradio.com, and read all about it. But there was an article that pointed out that the top 4 cities in America are all led by Black mayors. That would be LA, New York, Chicago, Houston. Isn't that something? That's really, really awesome. Look across Southern California, you got LA, you got Long Beach, you got Compton, you got Inglewood, Carson, Black folks taking these mayoral seats and leading our urban areas to greatness in this post-pandemic world. Congratulations to our friend Yvonne Wheeler. Last night, she was elected the president of the Los Angeles County Federation of Workers. That's the largest union organization in the area, if not the state. Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of union workers fall under that federation. And she's the first Black woman to lead that organization. That seat was vacated by Ron Herrera after he was caught on tape, along with Nuri Martinez, Gil Cedillo, and Kevin De Leon, making disparaging remarks about people of color. Redistricting, just all kinds of foul rhetoric. The story came out of City Hall. We've talked about it here on Coffee Conversations with Greg J. But since it's a holiday week, we want to get a little lighter. We always have our finger on the pulse of the music. And somebody wrote me the other day and asked me when we were going to restart our podcast, the Afro Pop Radio. And, I think I'm going to do that. I think we're going to make that happen, especially in light of our stronger connections with Mother Africa. Keep following along. You'll find out exactly what we're up to. Go to Beach City Radio, beachcityradio.com if you ever want to travel with us to Ghana. So there's some information on that website for you, and also across our Facebook pages. So I'm looking at the music, and I'm listening to the music. I'm seeing a lot of Black influence in the music and contemplating how Black music is an influence across the world, right? Everywhere you go, you could see the influence of music. And, every now and again we have our roster of critics, culture critics, and historians, and lecturers, and academics to examine the history of our music, to examine the essence of our music on the global stage. And our guest today is my new friend. He's coming to us live from the UK. Kevin Tomlin, he's a music historian. Good morning.
Yes. Good. Well, it's evening in our neck of the woods. It's just after 5 or 17:07. Yes.
17:07. Y'all got the military time going on over there.
Yes. So we got. I usually use the military time. I'm sort of accustomed to that. I like to use it. It gives it a little bit more robust and body. 1700 out.
Nice. Before we get into the music, Kevin, I want to ask you a question now that I have you here. We did examine this topic a couple of weeks back after Queen Elizabeth passed on, and we wanted to know, in Black America, we wanted to know, what does the monarchy mean to Black people in Britain? And so we had a person from the Black newspaper on, and it was pretty fascinating to learn that history. So why don't you give it to us there, Mr. Music Historian?
I mean, living in a monarch environment is sort of different because it's not a republic. It's the person who is of King Charles III, which is the monarch after taking over from his late mother. When you think about it, from the time I was born, 2 years after the Queen was actually take the throne from late father, so my entire life been on the throne. It's quite interesting is that the Queen is fascinated about Blacks and what they do, because I think I don't really, what is fascinated about her, one doesn't know what her opinion is on anything. How this woman managed to keep her opinion to herself is quite incredible in itself, Think about it. She meets the Prime Minister every Friday. So they brief her, well, they're briefing her son now, Charles III, about the latest development. Of course, I know Charles and the Queen can ask pertinent questions, but they cannot discuss policies. Do you follow me? But as the Queen and her son, they're privy to everything that goes on within the economy and the Commonwealth. Don't forget that the Commonwealth, which they're former countries that were once ruled directly by the Crown. Yes. Yes. So that's and of course, what is fascinating as well is that the former colonies like Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Nigeria, and so on, all have incredible impact, cultural influence on the UK in terms of fashion, language, and music, and so on. Because most of the top, we have top end Black musicians who's worked for the late George Michael, Adele, and the list goes on. But we are correcting that in terms of that. We're documenting them now. These, what we call them, creative power brokers behind the scene. So there's a lot of them. And so it's, yes. And they've done, one thing I must say that's interesting about Britain, Ella Fitzgerald, Sam Cooke, and people like Malayla Shaw and Etta James have had a lot of certifications in the UK and Europe more than the US. So their old music is selling. So the Europeans can't, they just love the Black music.
So I was going to ask you, so when we hear, I do notice across, when I look at charts in the UK and even across Africa, right, I see artists that may not be that it's not that they're unpopular here, but they're not like way superstar status. But over there, they're huge. The people really love them.
yes. Well, the thing about it, like for instance, Stormzy.
Mm-hmm.
Stormzy is one of the biggest rap artists in Europe. You
Mm-hmm.
know, mega. He's a mega star. And he's well known in the Commonwealth as well as
Mm-hmm.
in Britain and Europe. Right?
Mm-hmm.
He might not be well known in the US, but it doesn't matter because one thing we need to understand: these brothers can actually live a comfortable life without even crossing the US.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
think about it with Europe in particular. Europe has 500 million people, bruv, compared to
Wow.
the US, which is at 300,000, 300
Mm-hmm.
million rather,
Mm-hmm.
300 million and 500 million.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So you think
Wow.
about the buying power and also the biggest music markets in the world. There's at least three of them, three or four countries within Europe that are the biggest music market. Germany number 4, Britain number 3, of course Japan number 2, US number 1. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and don't forget about France, which is number 5 or 6, depends on
Mm-hmm.
how you look at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, so there's a big markets for black music and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
We've seen over the last few years, I guess even just before the pandemic hit us, the rise of Afro beats, right? And so now
oh yes,
African
yes, yes.
artists are taking over the ears of the youth here in America. I will say I was one of the first to trumpet the sound and say, "Hey, this music coming out of Africa is the bomb, y'all." And so, is Afro
Yes.
beats large in the UK like it is growing here in America?
Yes, it is.
Mm,
Burderman, yes. He's a big operative,
mm,
Grammy nominated
yeah.
artist. Yes, he's very big in continental Africa.
Mm-hmm,
And yeah, he's a major recording entity.
mm-hmm,
Yes, he's
mm-hmm,
big. So
mm-hmm.
how big is he? That I don't know what the stats are, but
Yeah.
um, he's fairly big.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's big. He's big.
Yeah, one of my favorite house music DJs I discovered when I began to go to South Africa, and that's Black Coffee. And
Mhm.
somebody was telling me, and I didn't realize that he took a majority stakeholder, shareholder position in Gallo Records, which is one of the largest independent record labels in the United States. And I didn't know that he had taken a majority shareholder position there. And then he's got a lot of other really large business interests that let you know that he's generating a lot of revenue through his mixes and through his shows and everything like that. Is Black
Oh, yeah.
Coffee big in the UK?
Well, I don't. The interesting thing, no doubt, it is
Mm-hmm.
underground and so forth. Because the when you go to say Europe and go to Spain, to Ibiza and so forth, you hear them playing a lot of mix, hip
Mm-hmm.
hop mix, and Birdman and so forth and so on. So the thing about it is that there are a lot more blacks who are being, for instance, I give you an example of some of the black families who are prominent in the music. You have the Yard family, where Steve Yard, a gentleman of our age group, his two sons is top end producers, top end,
Mm-hmm.
and most of the clients they work with is from the Eastern Bloc, from Poland, Czech, and so forth, come to get them to get produced by them. And the same thing with Tesley Francis, another brother whose children are involved in the industry and producing people from Europe and so forth. So yes, there's a heavy, there's a lot of what we call musical dynasties that are just like the Jacksons and so forth, that are creative power brokers, but they're not known by the public, but
Mm-hmm.
they are the creative engines. That's why I
Mm-hmm.
talk in my books, you see. I talk about
Mm-hmm.
the key power brokers, not known by face, but they're vitally important to the sound and, yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was fascinated there. we're talking about, black coffee and that house music sound and everything. And as I was preparing for today's conversation with you, I was fascinated your Chicago soul examination. Now, before we get, I want to ask you about that, but before we get into it, I think we should probably let the people know, like, who is Kevin Tomlin? You're an academic. I could see that. You got classes and you're a professor at the university and whatnot. Okay, you got an author.
Well, yes, I've taught in. I started teaching in 1976, actually, in Jamaica. That was
Mm.
my first paid session, of course. I did my practice teaching in Trenchtown during the time of Bob Marley emerging as the creative power broker that he became. You see,
Mm-hmm.
this I remember all when they were trying to kill him. I was there, and so I started my should I say my creative journey from that time. You see, and what I was interested in, although I'm a visual trained artist as well, but in the end I taught drama, literature, music history, and so forth. So I deal with the whole creative process to do with
Yes.
the Black experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I taught in America through the Arts and Education program for several years when I was living in the US. And I taught in the UK. I stopped teaching about 2016. Just got tired, getting old, leave it to the youngsters. But
Yeah.
but I can deliver contents. I do courses and talks
Mm-hmm.
on music of Black origin,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I do treat music of Black origin as a holistic and an empowering experience, because our brothers are so deep that when they sing, they can actually transform a person of different color into a different. When you see, I saw Teddy Prendergast live before his accident, and after watching him live, other singers and so on, I found him to be anticlimax, if you know what I mean, because
Mm-hmm.
where the brother he was ministering, although he's talking about love, but he talked about it with such grace and delicacy and refinement and holistic. So he actually took the man and woman to levels of respect for their lovemaking and understanding who they are, and so it's quite fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, anyhow.
Yeah, that's a great observation that you see, that the music is spiritual in nature,
Oh yes,
transforms,
force,
you
force, it's a
know.
force, brother. Yeah.
Yes. So now, okay, so let me ask you this question, because this is something I have been talking to with my industry veteran. I too have a long history in this industry, and we're listening to the music now. I mean, this music is almost pornographic. That's it. That's at top of mind, right? There's so much music out there that's glorifying. It's talking about shooting and killing your brothers and sisters, and just wanton violence, crimelessness.
Yes.
And I don't mean to be an old fart about it. I'm just saying, when the brother comes down the street with his boombox, I'm shocked and appalled at the lyrics that I'm hearing. And if our music has such a transformative element like you describe, isn't this kind of destroying the minds of our young people? Or it has an effect, right? It has an effect
Well,
on our young people. It has an
yes,
effect
yes,
on how people even look at us.
yeah. Well, when we were growing up, think about when we were growing up. We were listening to Motown. We were listening to Curtis Mayfield. We were listening to the Impressions. We were listening to the Earth, Wind and Fire, Maze, War, and the list goes on. And these brothers and sisters were actually preaching positiveness and enrichment. Notice the word positive. They were actually executing rather extraordinary tracks, which are timeless, you see.
Hmm.
And the issue is that it largely depends, Greg, who is
Mm-hmm.
actually at the pulse of the button in actually marketing these
Ah,
guys. Who is
ah,
marketing them? And yeah, because remember a couple of years ago when you had the gangster violence between the
Yes.
East and the West Coast, and
Yes.
which we lost Biggs and Tupac's, which I was living in the US. My children and I, we were deeply sad watching these brothers, listen about these brothers getting slain over, and you wondered, it's almost a pattern where when we look at the challenges that Kanye West is dealing with and so forth, you ask yourself the question, what should be, do we have the strength as a people to actually speak what is right? Because when you remember Curtis Mayfield was talking about the social injustice in his music, and it resonated with the whites as well. Okay, keep on trucking, keep on moving, and so forth. The whole train and so forth, all these different things, which had an impact. And then you have Gamblin talking about cleaning up the ghetto. Ghetto, and then Marvin Gaye talking about what's going on. Curtis Mayfield talking about Superfly, which is making a complimentary contribution and a statement regarding the prostitutes and the brothers who sell drugs. He didn't glorify it, but he brought it to the attention. And interesting, his music, Superfly, was #1 for 4 weeks on the pop album charts, which is incredible.
Wow.
It sold about 26. In my book, you would find all that information. Sold about 26 million. It generated, and don't forget, Superfly movie did about 30 million. So if you combine them together, that was over 50 odd million in gross earning, both for the soundtrack and for the movie. Yes. So, but as I said, a lot of those things were actually bringing the issues to the forefront. As I grew up as a black brother, I could relate to these men and women because I could hear their soul and the impact that they were impacting us over the other side of the pond, right? I couldn't relate to Zig Ziglar and so on because those white brothers, they don't understand my struggle. Yes, they might be, but do they understand my struggle? When I get up in the morning, when I look in the mirror, I have to remind myself, I'm a black brother. I'm not, that's the bottom line. How do I actually deal with it, that sort of thing, Yes.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
It makes all the sense in the world, and it is a profound level of consciousness, and a consciousness I think that we really need to get back to. And I'm not saying censorship. I'm saying, we do need to police the lyrics. And you are absolutely right. We have to begin to examine those who are financing, those who are marketing and promoting it. They're reaching down to the bottoms and lifting up the bottom and say this is how they are, and that's really we reject that narrative is what we say.
Yes, of course.
I see on your Facebook page here you got a little expose on Chicago soul. You talk about Shy Lights and Curtis Mayfield and all those guys.
Well. The thing about Chicago soul, which is quite fascinating, is that it was the first city where a vast amount of black creatives were classically trained. Yes, they were classically trained. Would you believe it? You had the Johnny Pate, who is also I don't know if he's still a lecturer, but he's the last time I read, he was a lecturer at Indiana University in the music department, and he was the key arranger for Clayfield stuff right up to Superfly. And don't forget now, then you had a brother by the name of James Mack, who died in Greece of amorism. He was key to the sonic training of Tom Washington. We call him Tom 84. You had he was responsible for the training of Leah Graham, who produced the many of Tyrone Davis' later stuff like In the Mood and so forth, and You My Shining Star by the Manhattans. All these were responsible most of those guys were trained by this brother. So and then let's just not forget Charles Stepney.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Wow.
the early explosion of Wind and Fire, the late Charles Stepney. All these men and women as well, they were classically trained. That's the interesting thing about Chicago, is that it wasn't a lot of head knowledge. It was a lot of these brothers could read notes. A lot of the musicians, they could read notes. Then you had the brilliance of Phil Upchurch. Well, one of the greatest, to me, one of the greatest session men, who worked on Michael Jackson Off the Wall album. And then another brother from Chicago who was a copyist in Chicago, and then he became a major session musician and arranger and so on. Benjamin Wright Jr. From Michael Jackson's first hit record on Epic, Stop Till You Get Enough. He did the strings on that.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
and of course, let us not forget Bruce Swedien, who was responsible for the Shy Lights hit, "Oh Girl, Haven't You Seen Her?" He was the engineer on that. The same guy who engineered "Stop Till You Get Enough" from Thriller.
Yeah, you know,
Right.
it's interesting about Bruce. I was thinking about him Sunday. I was on my run, and on my playlist came up Tevin Campbell's "Can We Talk," and I was just examining just the full body of how it was recorded and everything. And man, there'll just never be another Bruce.
Yeah, well, Bruce Swedien is this was his definition of recording. He started from primitive to complex. He was I regard him just like Joe Tarzia of the Philly sound engine. I regard them as musicians as well as an artist, because they understand how to capture the sound, the body of work that is actually recorded. You know, very innovative, and so they were very artistic in their approach, and they were interested to capture, like for instance with Bruce Swedien, he was interested to capture the creative vision of Quincy, because they worked with each other from the 50s, you know, Dinah Washington stuff, and so he knew how Quincy operated. So when you listen to Stamp by the Brother Johnson and Strawberry, hello, you know, all that sonic mastery. To me, this all came out of Chicago. You see, this is where the Quincy Jones. When you think about it, Quincy Jones' first million seller as a producer was with Leslie Gore. That was approximately 25 before Off the Wall, almost. And Bruce Swedien was working with him from that time. So you see the growth. So by the time they reached the Brother Michael, they were ready. They were sonically in a different space. Remember, they were in a different space in their creative force. So they could find everything that was sleeping and dormant in Michael and pull it out.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes all the sense in the world, because that's really what happened.
Yeah, no, the futation. Yes.
Yeah, I want to ask you a question that I'm fond of asking my friends in the arts and culture community. You know, I'm on the board of the Arts Council for Long Beach, and I'm the president, serving as the board president right now. And I like to talk to the thank you. Like to talk to the professors of art and everything. And when we examine this notion of fine art, right? So, you know, I always challenge the notion of, okay, what is fine art? So the question I always ask, so breaking it all the way down to the charts, like to the complexity of the compositions, you mean to tell me you would call Mozart a classical composer, but not Stevie Wonder? What would you say to that?
Well, Stevie Wonder has reached to, Stevie Wonder is a multifaceted entity. Notice the word multifaceted. So he's got the classical element, he's got the jazz element, and he's got the gospel element. So it's a totally different approach compared to Tchaikovsky and so on. Especially when you listen to his early stuff that he did during the 70s, like songs in the key of life. Wow, that had jazz elements, it had classical element, it had funk element, it had pop, everything going on, and jazz fusion at the same time.
Yeah.
So he's just as brilliant and a genius, just as like Tchaikovsky, because you cannot do that without a deep understanding of the musical force and the synergy and the sonic space. Does that make sense?
Yes, it
So
does. Yeah.
when I talk about fine art, I'm talking about the delicate balance, sonic delicate balance that you get. And sometimes you can be in the studio and prodding along, and then the musicians and the creatives got the synergy just locked because they're exploring, doing exploratory strategy, and suddenly they go, boom, click. And then it goes, because that's why I say music is a force and a spirit, because you can't see it, but you can hear it.
Yeah.
So
Let me ask you this.
This is how yeah, go on.
Yeah, you have the let's talk about the linkage of Black music and gospel. I mean, I just think that you can hear the gospel influence in our music all the time, especially when you're dealing with real musicians. And one time we were watching a lecture. We were attending a lecture by Bootsy Collins, right? He wasn't playing. He was talking about his history, as you see. And so, well, actually, yeah. So, actually, Rhonda asked him this question during the Q&A, asking him, okay, well, where did you get who was your influence? And he was like, the church. Let's talk about that for a minute, and I always get a laugh when I'm talking about this very subject.
Let's just go back to that. It's a very interesting subject.
Yes.
The top end musicians, especially for the Black community and some from the white community as well, the top end, notice the word, the top end, they come from the jazz and church community, according to the late James Ntume. And he's done over years of observation, and I had to totally agree with him, because I'm saying, let me see, even in the UK, the top end, the Luke Smiths of the world, brother, I could tell you, bruv, listen, I could tell you, and all these musicians came from and I tell you who they used to listen to a lot. Who they listened to. You'd be surprised who, especially the ones up in the Midlands, who they listen to a lot. Phil Upchurch.
Ah, wow.
Phil Upchurch was their go-to in terms of technical. I mean, when you go to an old session with Phil Upchurch with his own compositions and what he's done with the Shy Lights, what he's done with Curtis Mayfield, what he's done at Chess, what he's done, you get a musical intelligence that takes you to another level. The charts really, and most of these people have church influence. Chicago, New Orleans, Memphis, Muscle Show. These brothers have some connection with the church. They grow up if they were working in a white Baptist church, or they hang out with Black brothers. Like the late Rick Hall's favorite friends of his personal friends that he loved were Black people. He loved the Black music. You wake up Rick in the morning, all he's thinking about, music from a Black perspective. That's why when you hear him doing Patches by Clarence, you hear the Black experience. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes, I do.
So the church, brother, the church is the anchorage for top-end musicians. Because if you think about it, I'll give you an example from my experience. A whole sister in the church raised a chorus, bro, and you're trying to get the groove with that, and everybody, you have about at least minimum of 5 minutes to get that groove and to get the song going. So you are constantly thinking, innovating on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
So with that and their musical training on top, they became extraordinary musicians. You know, they
Mm-hmm.
they became in demand. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you look
Mm-hmm.
at, for instance, you look at such technocrats as Nathan East on bass. You know,
Yes, yes, yes. We went to the same high school, Nathan East and I.
you know,
Yes,
come on.
so San
And
Diego,
there you are,
baby.
there you are, there you are. Yes.
Interesting
Oh,
stuff.
see,
Interesting
yes,
stuff.
yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So now, who
Yes.
are you
So
listening to
that's it.
now?
Yeah.
Who can we say is currently? Because I see the music now being, so, in some cases, a lot of the musicianship that we're discussing doesn't really make it to our top of mind awareness. Everything is very much now digitally oriented, digitally created, and everything. And a lot of times, hit records are made with people who have no musical training at all. Who can we say now of the current crop of musicians is doing their art at the levels that we're talking about?
Lamar.
Mm.
Lamar, he's got jazz. If you listen to the groove, him and Kanye West, they are serious practitioners. Um, you have you have Mariah Carey, is another serious sister. There's almost a few people, really. There's almost a few.
Mm.
If you're looking at the level of extraordinary excellence and the Babyface, Jimmy Tam and Terry Lewis with their last album that they did. Did you listen to the
Mm.
track that they did with Babyface?
Yes, and they were guests on my show, and we were able to debut it.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I tell you, listen. When you listen to that, you hear the whole school, that
Yes.
that group, see, and remember, these are three musicians who understand. You don't need digital. These are master musicians and lyricists.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so I look forward to hear more of that stuff. Of course, um, depends on who is giving the money and actually govern who they want to. Uh, I'm more interested now in actually promoting the independent artists,
Yes, I
the
was going to
independent
mention to you, Kevin.
creative. Yes,
Exactly. I think, I was going to mention to you because I think what we're seeing now is a movement of a lot of artists of this ilk, shunning the major label contracts and saying, I want to make my own music on my own terms and get back to the original musicianship that I know and we know that the people will love. So you're
amen,
absolutely
amen,
right. The
amen.
independent. Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. I think okay, for instance, okay, you go with a main label, they might enable you to move about 1 million units. You do it independent, you move about 250,000. But the thing is that the difference, the 250,000 you move, is that most of that money come back to you, ching ching.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference, isn't it? So
Mm-hmm.
in actual
Mm-hmm.
fact, with less units sold, you're getting a bigger part of the pie.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah.
Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah.
Prince did
Yeah.
that with the concept.
Yes, he
Yeah.
did.
So
Stevie Wonder did
it's
that.
come
Kind of
across.
broke when he broke away from Motown. Remember, he got ownership of all of his masters
That's
so
right.
that he could get a larger piece of the pie.
That's right.
It was revolutionary
That's
in those
right.
days when he
It is
did that.
vitally important. Yes, of course, it
Mm-hmm.
was revolutionary. And then you have people like Marvin Gaye sort of
Mm-hmm.
jump on that creative spear, and
Mm-hmm.
the line of riches and so on, where they're looking
Mm-hmm.
for larger returns on their royalties. And
Mm-hmm.
what you're doing actually fueling the Spotify's. Why not get a
Mm-hmm.
better share? You know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
if you don't
absolutely.
produce that quality of music, Spotify's and so on and Apple will not exist. But
Right.
it won't exist. You know,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You are the fuselage. You are
Mm-hmm.
the energy behind the existence of money spending on Taylor Swift. If it wasn't for Marvin Gaye and Barry White and so on, uh, there wouldn't be no Taylor Swift.
Taylor
Or
Swift gives
and
me
the
a
list goes
headache,
on.
man. She gives me a
Yes,
headache.
she does. a sweet lady, but not my
Right.
cup of tea.
Right.
I like some. It's just the same. It's the same sort of volume, and I like to hear to some. I like to hear some slow jam and grooves. You know, like the sort of Patti LaBelle. You know, when she really gets into the groove, or the late Phyllis Hyman. You know, and I'm
Yeah,
sure you know what I'm talking about.
I was listening to Patti LaBelle on my playlist when I was on my run on Sunday, and I was just thinking, man, what's great
Yeah.
music. One of the greatest songs, soul ballads ever to me. But a very sad song is "Isn't It a Shame" by LaBelle. And she really sings that song, and I was just listening to her phrasing and listening to the band, and I mean, man, what a great record. You
Well,
know that one?
you know, if I'm not the one that Alan Toos in New Orleans from that particular album. Was it from that particular album?
No, it
Was it
was
on
from
Epic? Because they did a
LaBelle.
lot of stuff.
It was LaBelle
Okay,
was, I think
LaBelle.
that, yeah, they were on Casablanca, weren't they? Wait, I can't remember. LaBelle. It was LaBelle
They
where it
were
was
on
Sarah
Epic.
Dash, Nona
Yeah,
Hendrix, and
yeah,
Patti
that's right.
LaBelle.
Yes, yeah, they were at Epic, and the
Mm-hmm.
Epic first album that they did on Epic was produced by the late Alan Toussaint from New Orleans. You know, using
Mm-hmm.
use the meters as the that's another group there, meters.
The beaches, right?
Oh, you brother, look,
Da,
listen,
da,
that,
yeah,
oh,
oh, that's the jam.
and, look, the meters. These I call them the technocrats of music. They because um, when we look at New Orleans, for instance, I'm going to give you a little history about New Orleans, which is my first book I wrote on the icons of New Orleans. I discovered that the late Earl Palmer was the session drummer for the first Mission Impossible soundtrack.
Oh wow!
Yes,
With Layla
this brother was
Schifrin.
serious. Sure, yes. Schifrin. This is what Schifrin said about this brother. He said that he's one of the most amazing drummers he ever worked with, who can keep a steady beat. He said, considering the fact that he's famous for his rock and roll stuff, but yet he can work in a classical element. That's what that's why. And the thing about what we need to remember with a lot of the New Orleans musicians, change. You know, do you know that? A lot of the New Orleans musicians that worked for Fats Domino and David Bartholomew, they were college trained and university trained.
Oh wow! I didn't know
Interesting.
that. Wow.
So there you are. There's a you have to go through my books, brother, to get because we go
I want you
into
to
deep analysis.
laundry list. Yeah, I want you to laundry list your books before we go for sure, so we can put those in the chat and show the people where you can get them. But man,
Okay.
I'm just saying,
Yeah,
Fats
let me
Domino is.
put
I found the thrill.
yeah.
Those were the jams
Yeah,
back
yes,
in
yes,
those.
yes. That's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
All right, let's.
well, remember, which is interesting as well. Yeah, go. Yeah, go. Yes. Yeah, go on.
Let's
You were
go
saying
to
something. Sorry.
let's talk about James Brown, the godfather of soul brother number one. You know, I've been listening to him a lot just because one
Well,
of my favorite James Brown song is Cold Sweat. And again, on my run, when I'm running those miles, the long version always pops up in my playlist. And again, as I'm running, I'm studying. Yeah, man, it's like right? It's crazy. It's like James
yes.
Brown, yo.
I mean, James Brown. A lot of a lot of a lot of jazz riffs and funk combination. A combination of both. Um, a matter of fact, I don't know how he keeps up with the rhythm. It's amazing. You know, the drumming and the bass, it's synchronized at a different level. I mean, it's funk at a higher level of expression.
Yes, I know that drum solo of
It's
on Cold
oh,
Sweat is crazy. He's locked in that pocket, man. Yeah.
yeah, yes. Well,
And he's singing, and James is
with
singing.
James,
He's singing and talking stuff. He says,
oh yes,
sometimes I clown and I jump back
yeah,
and do the James Brown.
yeah. I'm saying that book. One of my first book. That's the first one. The Icons of New Orleans. If you see that, send it into the chat.
Okay, Icons of New Orleans. Let me just put that in there.
Run the Love is Right was on Newtown, Cameo, Atlantic, Warner Brothers, and Epic. Yes, she was right. Yeah.
All right, research department, get it.
You get it?
Okay, so where are we getting your books at? On Amazon?
It's on Amazon. The books are Icons of New. That was written over a year ago, and the next one is Icons of Memphis, right? And the icons we talk about the Al Green, the Otis Redding, the Isaac Hayes and Isaac Hayes and Porter, Sam and Dave, and so on. All the Willie Mitchell production and so forth. That particular go to the third of Marshall, which Icons of Marshall Show deals with the Marshall Show rhythm section according to the staple singers. I take you there with myself from him, and bit of Johnny Taylor, Disco Lady, and so forth. The influence of that on that album. And we have Patches by Charles, and of course from the Fame Studio, that's where Candice Turner started her career under the creative direction of the late Record. So you find out that in that book. And then the final book, actually those three books I mentioned, they were released last year.
Okay, so you have the Icons of New Orleans, and then what's the second one?
Icons of Memphis. And then the third one is Icons of Muscle Shows. Muscle Show. Want me to spell that for you, Muscle Show?
No, I got it. Muscle Shoals. Yeah,
yes.
People don't know about that then, there. Those horns are the Muscle Shoals horns are like, oh my God, legendary.
Brother. Yes. Similar to the Memphis horn section.
Yes.
And then the last one is the Icons of Chicago, the recent one
we were talking about.
Which yes, that's right. Yeah.
So you all can get these books. Just go online and check them out and get them so you can. The Icons of Chicago.
Yeah, that's right. They can go to. They can get them on Amazon. They're available on Amazon, and just put in my name, Kevin Tomlin, music historian, and then they will come up. Kevin Tomlin, music historian. Because there's a lot of books on icons, but my book to do with music, music, the creative music of Black origin, brother,
Yes.
Introduction to American soul and R&B doing Chicago, Chicago. Yes. Oh yes.
It's interesting how our music has metamorphosized through the decades. I mean, If we go back to the big band
Yes.
sound, you know, music of the
Mm-hmm.
20s, 30s, and 40s, and then that morphed into bebop. You know, you got Tab Hunter, you know, those guys, kind
Yes,
of
that's right.
guys like that, right? You know,
Oh
and
yes,
then
yes, yes, yes,
the
yes, yes,
revolution
yes.
of soul when Motown came about and everything. You know, it's really fascinating
Yeah.
stuff. Now, let me ask you this: when you listen to hip hop music,
Oh yes, yes, yes.
and you think back,
Yeah.
like you were talking about Biggie and Tupac
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. I was at the party where Biggie was, and um, I saw him there, and I left the party. And the next morning, I turned on the radio to hear that he had been shot and killed. It was very tragic, very, very tragic. But didn't like in your
Yes, yes, yes.
did you notice how hip hop just basically disrupted the essence of black music when it came onto the scene?
Yes, it did actually. It actually put a lot of black labels almost out of business. You know, because the
Mm,
Curtain label could not compete with that. Curtain
mm,
label was struggling with disco as such, and Philly managed to do a few things in between. You know, like Philly Simon don't want to change the world and so on.
mm,
So
mm,
it managed somehow to keep solvent.
mm,
And But this is interesting about the hip hop revolution, which a lot of people don't know. During the hip hop revolution 90s, there was about over 30 half a million and above
mm.
in units.
Say it one more time. There
Yeah.
was over.
And a lot of the
Say it one more
soundtracks
time.
were from, there was over 30, yeah, there was over 30 black soundtracks that did over half a million copies and above in terms of gold,
Yeah,
platinum, multi-platinum, triple
yeah,
platinum. Like for instance, Waiting to
yeah.
Excel. Waiting to Excel and the Face record did 7 million units, bro.
Mm,
Totally
mm-hmm,
created
mm-hmm,
by Babyface. That
mm-hmm,
was
mm-hmm,
Babyface at his the best.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I remember that the
And
soundtracks
above the
being so
rim,
popular.
because
I
oh yes,
remember that the
yes, yes, yes.
soundtracks being
They,
so
you know, I
popular.
mean,
I
New Jack City.
yeah. I worked for
Yeah,
Lee
New Jack
Bailey
City.
and Radioscope in those days.
Yeah. Oh
Okay,
right.
and
Okay.
yeah, okay. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember telling
Mm-hmm.
Lee that, man, we should do a show just on soundtracks alone because some of this music is bomb. The best soundtrack for
Yeah.
me in that
Yes.
era is from a film that wasn't a black movie, but it's a comedy film called Bulletproof. That
Oh
soundtrack
right.
is
Okay.
so crazy hot. It is not even funny. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. 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 Yeah. The soundtrack
Yes.
era.
Yeah, because remember with the soundtrack era, you had the Jimmy Jam with No More Money.
Yeah.
You had Hello Babyface were doing their thing. You had Bad Boy Production doing their thing with soundtrack. There was so many soundtracks,
Mm,
Snoop Knight and so forth. All these people were doing soundtracks that were doing. I mean, some of them were so big that they were selling it. The biggest soundtrack, gospel soundtrack of all time in Europe. Have a guess who it is. This is quite interesting.
was that Preacher's
It's
Wife?
a gospel soundtrack. Yes, yes,
Ah,
brother. Over, yes, it sold out nearly 2 to 3 million copies in Europe alone.
wow. Wow.
It just,
Wow. Wow.
it was a runaway best.
Mm,
And I tell you, just to show you how black, when Barry White died, one greatest sold 5 million copies in Europe alone after his death. Five
his greatest hits.
million copies, bruv.
Wow.
Yeah, one of his
Wow.
greatest hits. Yes.
Mm. Yeah, you know, Snoop Dogg got his start. That was his first single was from the soundtrack Deep Cover. Wow.
Yes,
That's right.
that's
That
right. Yes,
soundtrack
yes.
era was really,
Yeah.
really something. Hmm. So,
Yes.
do we get
The
soundtracks
90s.
like that anymore?
No, not at the moment. No, no,
Mm-hmm.
I don't regard. Yes, those the Teddy Riley and so on and Babyface. They were the top end at the pitch, and of course you had Clive behind them and all the other.
Mm-hmm.
The executives were quite an interesting bunch during that time, and
Yes.
they just connect. They competed against each other, and when you think about gospel, for instance, if you look at gospel, this is interesting. When you look at gospel during the 90s, and Vicky she was regarded as the Barry Gordy of gospel because remember her label, Gospel Eccentric, was number one as a gospel label for 10 years straight.
Mm-hmm.
10 years straight, it was number one gospel label in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And brother, the movements, the units that they were moving on that label was quite astonishing. It was incredible.
Yeah, gospel centric. They were
And
over there in Inglewood.
yet, yes, yes. Another thing too, which is interesting about Gospel Eccentric, is the first black owned label or the first label, independent label in history to actually to have a consecutive platinum live album. The first to do it
Wow. Wow.
in the history
Wow.
in the history of music, because it's very difficult to get a platinum live album, and Brother Kurt did that twice,
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
which in
Yeah.
itself is quite phenomenal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you think about it, uh, the two albums were so impacting that at one point both albums was in the top 5 of the charts,
Mm-hmm.
of the
Mm-hmm.
gospel charts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. So
Yeah, fascinating
yeah.
stuff. I remember Vicky Mack was, she used to be a
Oh yes,
rep for RCA Records. That's how long I've been
that's
knowing
right.
her.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I remember when she was RCA Record rep, she learned a lot from the executive masters who promoted Elvis Presley. She learned the
Mm-hmm.
corporate structure and how to market. That's where she got her mentorship and training. So I remember
Mm-hmm.
she was responsible for New York Community Choir,
Mm-hmm. Wow!
and
Wow! Wow!
she was responsible too for Champagne King. Shame, yeah, she
Yeah,
was behind that. Yeah, so
yeah,
I am not
that's right.
surprised. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised when she became a force to reckon with.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's right. That's right.
her
Got a chance to
husband.
sit at.
Yeah,
Got to. Yeah, I heard her husband Clyde. I got to sit at her table at the recent Living Legends Foundation gala. That's those of us who are in the
wow.
industry, Kevin. We have a reunion every year.
Yes,
The
yes,
Living
yes.
Legends Foundation gets together,
Fantastic,
and this particular one
fantastic.
was the first time we were able to come together. Since the pandemic, and it was really a
Yes,
powerful
yes, yes.
reunion, and it just had me in awe. I just had to sit back, against the wall and look at all of my friends and all of the people that were part of those glory days in the 90s, like as we're talking, those days were hot. Our black music era was, that's a golden
Yes,
age
it
right
was.
there.
That's a yeah, yeah. The
Mm-hmm.
90s was extraordinary for the black music, black gospel music in particular.
Mm-hmm.
And you have platinum hit gospel albums with the Haddam and CC Winan. These are what we say
Yes.
platinum. It's Succession. Donnie McClurkin, 2 live platinum albums in
Mm-hmm.
succession. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, gospel music at that time was on nearly about 3 occasions was doing $1 billion in gross earning, during
Sure.
the
Sure.
90s and early 2000. And not
Mm-hmm.
only that, at one time there was about 17 gospel acts that were doing multi-platinum in gospel.
Mm-hmm.
17,
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. Wow.
during
Wow.
that period. So it was phenomenal. It is. And then you have Brother Siegel on top of the game there, Siegel,
Yeah.
and the creative
Max Siegel.
power.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah.
Max Siegel, yes, an extraordinary brother, extraordinary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he went on to
Mm.
become a NASCAR owner, so he's making waves in the whole NASCAR circuit now. You know,
Well, he
one of the
certainly
first
has made
blacks to do it.
waves.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
interesting stuff.
so
You know what?
yeah. Anyhow,
You know, we're
go on. Go on.
coming to the end of our time, but before we get out of here, we got to talk about during that time of the 90s. You know, you also had the British invasion. You know, we had Terence Trent D'Arby, we had Loose Ends, we had
Yes.
quite a
Yes.
few artists coming
Yes.
through that made waves over here in the United States, and that music was always, you know, sexy to us. It was R&B and soulful, but it was different because it came from the UK, and they just took shout out to Jane Eugene. I know you listen to us every now and again from Loose Ends. That's my good friend.
Yes.
But talk about that,
Yes.
how the
Yes.
export of soul hit the shores of the United States.
Well, there was a time when they needed to be heard, you know. They had a different, you know, like for instance, you had Central Line with Walking in the Sunshine, which was a monster hit on the
I'm
East Coast and
walking
in
in
New York, New Jersey.
sunshine.
Shine,
Yeah.
sunshine. Yes, that sold almost 800 tons Palencia right there in New York. So he was heavy in the clubs. He was Sheet like that, you know, that sound. That was my late friend who did that, the late Linton Beckles. He's another mastermind. And
Right.
do you have you have the Soul to Soul.
Soul to
Keep
soul.
on.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Oh yes, and then you have Ashley Ingram, Ashley Ingram with his production, with the imaginations and so forth. And you have Ruth Turner, and
Uh-huh.
of course you have Junior. Is the Mama used to say, "Take your time,
Mama
young
used to
man."
say, yes, right.
And yeah,
Mama
yes, yes,
used to
yes, yes.
say.
Yeah. So all that creative power, and then Lady Sade on top of the game is, you know,
Yes, yes. Now,
diamond.
Sade is a band,
There's a
right?
lot of
So people know. I know she goes by the name
yeah.
Sade, but when you describe Sade, Sade is a band. People don't know that. Like when you say her
Sade is a
name in
band. Yeah,
context,
Sade is a
yes.
band. It's a band, and yeah, she's one of the should I say consistent hit makers in the US. You know. Yes. Oh, Jan Jean of Lucen will be in Long Beach, 26 at the,
Nice.
oh, okay, at the Long Beach Unity Festival. Very nice.
Nice.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess we're gonna have to
Yes.
be there
I hope
because that's my
and
folk
trust
there.
that I'll be. I hope and I hope and trust to be there next year, God willing, to come over your woods. You see.
As you should.
Yeah.
As you should. Yeah. So
Yeah.
this is very, very interesting.
Yeah. So they.
There's an artist that, I mean, if he could really mount a tour here, would do really, really well. And he's kind of on the underground, maybe on the borderline of underground and then general acceptances. The brother Omar, coming out of London. Do you know him?
Mhm. What's his name? What's his name?
Omar. Omar.
Oh, Omar. Yes, that's a very interesting. Omar is always, to me, always seemed to be on the border. That's oh, he's going
Yeah.
to make it now, because he's one of the old soldiers that's been around for quite a while, actually. Yes, and it would
His
be very
music
get
is
him over, and then to get him to tour, because it's all to do with marketing and creative liaisons, you know. I'm glad that we are actually having a rapport, because my main aim was always to actually connect with the other side of the pond, you know, find out the people who understand the global perspective of musical origin and bring it to bear, to educate people, because we're educating people on the power of music, Yeah, so I don't know.
Hey, Kevin, we're going to keep it going, man. And look, don't worry. This is not the last time you hear from me. We have many conversations. We're already way over time, but it's okay because this is this made my day. Got me smiling and singing and everything. This is great.
Oh, good.
Great.
Well, I'm glad that it did impact you. And yes.
What's your favorite radio station over there in the UK? What are you listening to?
Well, the favorite radio station I used to listen to was Choice FM, which was a black home, but it's no longer existing. Yeah. I used to listen to Capital Radio during the 80s with Robbie. I don't actually listen too much, very much to radio as such, unfortunately, because I'm just busy. But now and then I do like what David P does now and then. David P, who is old timers in the industry. He used to work at Capital Radio, Premier, and also Choice FM. But he does his own thing now. Urban gospel. Yeah. So that's a brother you could actually link up with. Very interesting. He could give you an old story and a lot of the many of the great. This is another interesting thing as well. It seems like it's the time for male black power, because the head of the British phonographic industry, similar to RI, head of it, the chairperson for it is a black lady, actually. It's a black lady.
Okay.
So there's a lot of there's a lot of so she's
in the UK,
a very powerful. Yes. She's responsible, because remember, the UK is the third biggest market in the world. Yeah, third biggest music market. Would you believe it?
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway,
that's something.
Yes.
All right, y'all. Kevin Tomlin, the music historian, live from the United Kingdom. He told me the other day he's out there in, what is it, Essex County? What do they do out there?
Yes, Essex County.
Hey, how far are you from Wales? They tied the United States in the World Cup, and I was kind of considering, okay, where is Wales? Where is that?
Wales is sort of west of me, actually. It's west of me geographically. West, and of course, Scotland is north of me, and I live between London and Cambridge. Yes, I'm 30 miles away from Cambridge and 30 miles from the closest point in London. Yes. Yes. There you are. That's
nice.
A geographical.
There it is.
Yes.
All right. Any last words you want to say to the people, Brother Kevin?
Okay. One of my last words is, if musicians, if they are creative people, if they want to become formidable, they must study to show themselves approved. They must study to show themselves approved. Study, master it, that it becomes part of your creative DNA. You become formidable and impacting. Yes.
Nice. Yeah, study to show yourself approved. Come on now. That's what's up, y'all. There it is. You can listen to this Coffee Conversations on our Facebook page, Coffee Conversations with Greg J. Hey, we're approaching 1,000 followers on that page. That's pretty good, I think, and then you can also get in.
I'm impressed.
Yes. Wow. Right? Me too.
Wow.
So you can get it at Coffee Conversations with Greg J. You can go on the Beach City Perspective. You can go to my personal page, and then, of course, Hannibal Media Group, all those ones. But you can go to the website, too, Beach City Radio, beachcityradio.com. Check it out there. YouTube, it's on there. If you go to YouTube, please like and subscribe. We are really working hard on improving our YouTube game. So I guess the likes and subscribes will help the algorithms elevate our brand on there. You can check it out there. We're going to repurpose this audio so that we can put this on wherever you get your favorite podcast. I'm talking iHeart, Spotify, Spreaker, Apple. Just type it in. Google, Amazon. Just type it in. Coffee Conversations with Greg J.
Yeah.
Music history, global music perspectives. That's what we're talking about this morning. Thank you all so much. What you want to say, Kevin?
Amen.
Amen. Okay, that's right. Hey, y'all have a great.
Yes, amen to that. Okay. Yeah. Fantastic, brother. Take care. Yes. Keep on, as Curtis Mayfield says, keep on trucking. Keep on trucking.
Keep on trucking.
Eddie Kendrick said, keep on trucking.
And, keep on trucking, baby.
And also, don't forget Curtis Mayfield. Keep pushing. Keep pushing.
Keep on pushing. Let me stop. Let me get off this.
Whoa. Hallelujah. Anyhow, let's just get off here before we have some sort of church going on.
Yeah? Oh, that's hallelujah. Right. All right, y'all. Amen, love one another. Love one another. Love one another. Peace and blessings.
And love.